Yeah, alright, we're back. This is part 3 of the Red Baron build. Be picking up where we left off on part 2. I left off, I was cutting out for the bottom wing here. And what we did was we just took our piece off our plans, centered it on there, traced out for it on both sides, just like that. You want to make sure you get this nice and straight and centered on both sides, because you want your wing to be perfectly straight across. So when I left off, I was cutting out that piece, which I went ahead and finished it up. Now we take our bottom wing, and I just center it between the two scallops here on each side. Just eyeball it up, make sure it's centered. Just like that. So I got the equal distance on both sides of the scallops. Now I know that wing is nice and centered. Just like that. Make sure it's nice and level, parallel with the plane here. That looks perfect to me. Now we can go back in here, hot glue this wing in. And I like to do it from the inside here. Go ahead and get all the way around it. Go ahead and hit this on the bottom too. As you can see, I got the flap on the wing level with the rear of the plane there. So that little lip don't matter. This is nice and flush with it. Now off camera I went ahead and cut out my struts. The wing struts, inner and outer. And there's 4 of those. 4 of each. Those are all just straight cut pieces. Wouldn't even bother doing it on camera. I'm going to do that with a lot of this stuff, like the guns. Here we got our machine guns. Cut that out off camera. Bottom wing for the landing gear. Go ahead and let that set up for a second. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and hit a small bead on both sides of the wings. I want to make it look real nice too, because we're going to be painting it. Looks good. Alright, now I want to move on to, so there's our main fuselage and our lower wing attached. And like I said, you want to make sure this wing is on nice and straight, because everything else is going to go by this wing. It looks awesome. Alright, I want to move on to cutting out the elevator. And what we got here is score, then V-notch. I already went ahead and scored for the elevator, or the hinge line here. Go ahead and just straight cut out the rest. I'll just go ahead and freehand this stuff. Again, this is just all straight cuts, guys. Well, for the ends here, I'll use my X-Acto knife. Like I said, I just cut on top of a carpet. It cuts a lot nicer than cutting on a hard surface. Now for the little notch here, you can just center your plans back on there. Make sure you got it nice and centered. And go ahead and cut out. This is where your rudder is going to stick down through here. Just like so. Alright, now what we want to do is where I scored. Take and run my knife back down the score line. This is where we're going to hinge it. This is the bottom of the piece, bottom of your elevator. Here's the top. We're going to hinge it from the bottom. So I want to go ahead and cut a 45 out of both sides. And I'm only taking like an eighth off both sides. This will create a V-notch so we can get some movement on our elevator. And we can see our elevator control horn where it's marked for there. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and install Took a small popsicle stick, cut it down a little bit so I can still get my control horn on there. I'll go ahead and hot glue this right here. Wipe away any of that excess. I just want to leave enough room on this side so I can get my control horn through here. And this will be the bottom side of your elevator here, so you won't even see this once it's painted. Also, what I like to do is take some CA glue after you create your V-notch for your hinge, and just run a straight line of CA glue down that and let it harden as you're flexing it back and forth. And that way the paper won't ever pull away from the foam where your hinge is. Go ahead and clean all this up. Alright, so there we got our elevator. Go on the back like so. Alright, now we're going to move on to the top front of the fuselage and the rear piece back here. I went ahead and taped it down to some scrap foam board I had from building the wings. Alright, you can see we got the score and V-notch these lines, but I'm just going to score them. Then we're going to straight cut the whole piece out, flip it over, and cut a 45 in on both sides. I'll show you what I'm talking about in a second. So right now I'm just going to go ahead and score these 4 score lines. If you don't want your paper to peel up, just start in a little bit on each end and don't cut all the way to the end. That way the paper won't peel up on you when you go to cut it out of here. I'm just going to start a little bit before the line. Go ahead and score it. It works good so the plans don't peel up on you guys. Just go ahead and stop it right there. So don't score all the way out to the end, just a little bit before each line. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and straight cut around the whole piece. I'll just freehand this. We use a ruler on the back, that's where it's going to butt up against the rudder or the elevator. Want it nice and straight. Pop her out of there. So that's what I meant by not scoring all the way out to the ends. It'll leave the paper in one piece, so your plans won't fall apart on you. Alright, so now where I went and scored each line, I'm going to go back and score out the end on each one. Now you can see this piece will fold. Alright, after you cut this out, after you straight cut around it, we're going to take the score lines and face them downward, flip the piece over, line our ruler up right on the ends, just go right out to the end, guys. Right out to the end of the piece of foam board, and then just cut a 45 in on it. Make sure your ruler's nice and straight. So as you can see, I'm just removing a little 45 on both sides. Put it right out to the end. Just like that. Alright, now where we scored our lines, we can take and V-notch it. I want this piece to fold inward on itself. I just keep running my knife down through it until it meets up with the score line. And we're going to do the front piece of the fuselage the same way I'm doing this one. So as you can see where we're scoring it, it'll fold in on itself now. You can also go ahead and clean up some of this back end. So you want this to lay nice and flat. Like that. So now this piece is going to meet up with the elevator. Just like that, you guys. Alright, I'll move on to the front of the fuselage. And again, it's the same thing. We're going to score the lines, straight cut out the whole piece, flip it over, and then cut a 45 in on both sides. Right now we're just going to go ahead and score. Now we can straight cut out the whole piece. Make sure you get it right on there. Go ahead and just freehand this back piece. You can always flip your piece over, go back wherever you missed any of the paper. It's always easier to see from the back side. And again, I didn't score them all the way out to the ends because I wanted the plan to stay together. Okay, now I'll go ahead and finish these out to the end. And again, with this piece, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to flip it over, cut a 45 in on both sides. And then go ahead and V-notch it on this score lines. Again, the piece will start folding in on itself. I'll go ahead and take a little bit more out of that one. Like that. And I'll do the same thing on this other side. Alright, and there's the front of our fuselage. Now when I make these pieces, what I'll do is I'll center it up on there. Just do a dry test run with it. That looks good, just like that. Now to make this piece fit on there, just like how I have it, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and hit a few spots of hot glue and score lines. Go ahead and hold it to its shape. And just let that hot glue set up. And that way the piece will fit perfect down here, exactly how it is. Go ahead and let that set up. Don't pull it away too early, guys, because then it'll fall out of shape. And there you go. Now we got the front of our fuselage. All nice and formed. Go right back on and off. It'll keep the shape it had. Same thing with the back, you're going to do the same thing. Just hold it. Once you get your elevator glued on there, then I'll take and install this where it needs to be. Alright, part 4, I'm going to get into assembling the tail, the rudder, and landing gear. Here's the machine guns. I'll cut out for the motor and to show the rotary engine through the front. This is where you're going to cut out. I just took the plans and taped these two pieces back together. Here's our rotary motor.